Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Tuesday, and Tuesday means unscheduled CEO. Oh. Come on, everyone. It is the All right, everyone. All right. Relax. Hey, welcome to the Unscheduled CEO podcast. Every Tuesday, it's a weekly podcast now. So every Tuesday, we've got an episode of the Unscheduled CEO. By the way, I just tried to record this 2 times. This is my 3rd attempt because this new video setup is causing so many fucking new technical issues. The Rodecaster just kept disconnecting. But I'm gonna power through it. I'm still hearing these clicks. It's all fucked up. Anyway, welcome to the Unscheduled CEO. If this is your first time, this is a weekly podcast. Comes out every Tuesday, even though it's called the Unscheduled CEO. Comes out every Tuesday for now, and it's kind of following the chronicles of a founder, me, running a business. I would say I'm a creative entrepreneur, meaning I'm like, I guess I started out in this business. Started as a design agency, product design, filmmaking, all that kind of stuff, and just kind of accidentally, the company grew and became a multi 7-figure business, which we are today, which is very cool. We peaked, meaning our maximum amount of revenue we peaked was 2 years ago. I think it was 6.5 million revenue with a close to 50% profit margin, which is cool. And then the company, I'm the CEO, so it's my fault. We kind of stagnated the last 2 years and even went backwards, meaning we've made less money in the last 2 years than 6.5. We're still doing pretty good. Profit margins are still close to 50%. I think they're 47% at the moment, year to date. But yeah, anyway. And this podcast is unedited. It's recorded live. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing the live, essentially a recording of a live stream. So there's no possibility for me to take things out or edit it. All the music you're hearing, everything is done live. I'm not, as in some of the music is pre-recorded. Some of it I'm actually creating live here with different instruments. But yeah, a lot of it is just pre-recorded and not made by me and made by different artists using this Epidemic Sounds program. Not that any of you care about this stuff. So welcome back to the podcast. Last week's episode was the first one where I brought it back to YouTube in, I think, over a year. So we're back on YouTube now. So if you want to listen on YouTube, if you want to watch this fucking shit show play out on YouTube, you can do that. So it's welcome to the show, or welcome back to the show. I've had food poisoning the last 2 days. So I was supposed to have a guest on this podcast this week. I have a really fucking cool lineup of guests. I don't usually do guests because I don't want this to be an interview podcast, and I don't want to be on anyone else's schedule and messaging back and forth and like, can you go? I don't want to do that. But I do have some people who are just friends of mine who you guys would maybe be interested in hearing from. They're like people that people know, who I'm going to bring on the podcast. But yeah, I had to cancel one yesterday because 2 things happened. Guys, listen to this shit. You know, the only thing that holds me back generally is health related stuff in the business. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys can relate to me on this, but like, okay, yesterday, so I have a brace, a permanent retainer at the back of my bottom teeth because I got braces a couple of years ago. And so when I was in the US a couple of weeks ago running an event, luckily everything in the event went fine. But then I was about to run a workshop and this fucking thing at the back of my teeth broke. And so I couldn't even talk. So I had to go to like figure out, thanks to my executive assistant for figuring this out. I had to, in the middle of a workshop, basically. So like, 8 a.m. on day 2 of the workshop, had to go to the dentist and had to get it re-put on, which cost like $1,400. And yesterday, only 2 weeks later, it broke again. And I had to go to the orthodontist yesterday, emergency. But on top of that, I got fucking food poisoning on Sunday night. So I started to feel like absolute shit around 8 p.m. And thought it would be better the next day. I sort of do these kickoff calls with the team on a Monday morning. I kicked off the call. I was pale. I was like a fucking ghost. I was feeling these waves of nausea after the call. I was so like not. So my job in AJ and Smart, as the CEO, when I'm running these Monday calls, it's called the all hands call. The goal is to just sort of look at how we're making money this week. Like what's our what projects are we focusing on? What's our direction, etc. I couldn't think straight. I still can't really think straight. I was just like giving such crappy instructions. The team was just kind of like giggling because I was so out of it. And I was like, guys, I'm sorry, I can't do this. So I just kind of gave the broad idea of what projects are coming up and what I'd like them to focus on this week. But it wasn't, I hate being sick. I really hate being sick. Because then I had to cancel the podcast. I had to cancel the guest. I still had to go while feeling pretty nauseous to the orthodontist, and they're putting stuff in your mouth and I'm like, ugh. They're sticking stuff in the mouth. Guys, I grew up in Ireland and all my teeth are fucked. And a huge part of meaning that like all of my teeth rotted. So by the time I was 20, every single tooth has fillings in it. And later in life, what that means is that they basically all start to like need like root canals and all of this stuff. So I basically live in the dentist. So it's you probably hear me talking about it a lot. Like people are always surprised, like how often I need to go to the dentist as an adult. I'm like minimum, like if I would actually stick to it, I would need to be there once a month for probably the next 3 years or something. But I always, after like 3 months of work, I'm like, I need a break from this. And I just, I stop. So yeah. Anyway, it was at the dentist and they fixed the thing and they're like another 300 plus another 400. So almost another 1,000. And, but whatever, the fucking thing is now removed from my teeth and I'm getting put back on Friday or Monday next week. Yeah, I feel like, guys, the energy is going to be low today. The energy is going to be real low. But I did commit to doing this every Tuesday, so we gotta make it work. Yeah. So, what has been happening on my sort of CEOing side? The biggest thing that's been happening is I've been dramatically redesigning my workspace, my home workspace, which I'm in right now. There's like stuff everywhere at the moment because I'm still working on it, but I'm looking forward to showing you guys in a future episode on the YouTube channel. But yeah, I've been cutting stuff. I've been putting like all the things I want to see like right where I want them. I've been building the streaming setup. It's been super fun, honestly. I've been really enjoying it. I really, really get a kick out of focusing on making my space where I work like as nice as possible. And I spoke about that, I think, last week. Maybe the last week's episode was about that. I've also been rereading, I've talked about this in the episode, this book, which is called The War of Art. I think I probably talked about it last week, but since nobody listened to last week's episode because of Labor Day, I'll talk about it again. So many of you have heard of this book called The War of Art. It's about basically how to do creative work and how to actually make sure, I guess like a big part of it is how to make sure that you don't get to an age where you regret not having explored your creativity. And what do I mean when I say, I guess identify as like a creative entrepreneur. That just means like how I make my money or the way my businesses are run. There's always an element of creativity to it. There's always an element of making things that are new and weird, or taking things that already exist and trying to make them different. And this book is amazing. So the first time I read this, I read probably 80% of it. And then I got to what's called book 3 here. This is book 3. You can see I write into the book, and I've written rereading August 2025. So book 3, one of my mentors reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jonathan, have you heard about the Muse, blah, blah, blah? It's in this book, The War of Art." And I was like, "I read The War of Art." And he was like, "Yeah, but did you read book 3? And I couldn't remember. So I repurchased the book. By the way, just a reminder, if anybody ever recommends a book to me, I buy it immediately on the spot. Jake Knapp, yesterday, I was chatting to him and he was like, "Hey, have you heard of this book?" I bought it immediately. I don't even question it. I'm just like, it's already bought. It's already on the way. Because then even if I don't read it for a year, it's sitting there, and eventually I might pick it up and have a life-changing revelation. So looking at The War of Art, going to book 3, and I read through it in one sitting. Maybe it took about an hour. And I think it is one of my favorite pieces of writing, nonfiction writing, especially on the topic of creativity that have read in a while. It's also very weird. It's also very, very esoteric. I spoke about this in a coaching call recently as well. I can get into esoteric stuff as long as it's not astrology or something. as long as the person's not saying, "Well, there's a provable way to show you that this is real," and then I'm like, "Okay, show me." Anyway, so this book 3 here is amazing. It's let me see. You'll see that I highlight a lot of stuff here. So the idea, I'm trying to see how to get this across. I'm trying to see where I can probably read a section of it. I'll read the weirdest section, okay? This is a bit out of context, but I'll read the weirdest section for you. This section is about this idea that, and I've spoken about this a few times, the idea that ideas kind of are living out there. It's Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this idea in Big Magic as well, that, and a lot of normal people also agree with this sort of way of thinking, that there's ideas that are just floating out there, and you as a creative or as an artist or as an entrepreneur, you pick, if you're in the right state of mind and you pick these up and run with them and take action on them, then you get to actually bring them into reality. And if you receive the ideas and do nothing with them, then you don't get to, unless ideas come to you. And so he said, there's this idea of, when we sit down each day to do our work, power concentrates around us. The muse takes note of our dedication. She approves. We have earned favor in her sight. When we sit down to work, we become like a magnetized rod that attracts iron fillings. Ideas come, insights accrete. I think it's called accrete anyway. So the idea here is that, at least with creative work, but I think it's the same thing with building a business. And that's why I do believe you should have a sacred space, an office space that you love to be in, that's separate from everything else in your house. You sometimes just sitting down at your space is the most important first step of just getting started. Things start to come to you. Things start to just happen. But with creative work, the idea that when you sit down to do the work, that you're like creating like attraction towards you of interesting ideas. Now let's get a bit more esoteric. So let me read this. Let's see how much. Maybe this is too much to read. No, I'll read this to you guys, and I'll see if you think it's too weird, and I'll see if it's too out of context. It might do something to some of you guys in a good way, or it'll suck. Okay, I'm going to read it anyway. Whatever. What I'm about to read to you guys is like this idea of where ideas come from, or why do we even need to create things? Why do we even need to make things? This is going to be a weird section. I'm warning you in advance. I know it's weird, but just fucking roll with it. I'm going to put on weird music to go with it. I'll put it down low. Okay. This is page 116, and it's called Testament of a Visionary. And the quote that it opens with is, "Eternity is in love with the creations of time," by William Blake. Now let's actually read what Stephen Pressfield has to say. The visionary poet William Blake was, so I understand, one of those half-mad avatars who appear in flesh from time to time, savants capable of ascending for brief periods to loftier planes and returning to share the wonders they have seen. Shall we try to decipher the meaning of the verse above? Reminder, the verse above says, eternity is in love with the creations of time. What Blake means by eternity, I think, is that... maybe I should put on echo on my voice here. What Blake... no, that's too creepy. What Blake means by eternity, I think, is the sphere higher than this one. A plane... I'm just thinking if like anyone's partner comes in and you're saying you're listening to a business podcast and then they see this shit, like this music in the background and then me reading this bullshit. Okay. I love it. I love it. Fuck you all. Okay. What Blake means by eternity, I think, is the sphere higher than this one. A plane of reality superior to the material dimension in which we dwell. In eternity, there is no such thing as time, or Blake's syntax wouldn't distinguish it from eternity. And probably no space either. This plane may be inhabited by higher creatures, or it may be pure consciousness or spirit. But whatever it is, according to Blake, it is capable of being in love. If beings inhabit this plane, I take Blake to mean that they're incorporeal, meaning they don't have bodies, but they have a connection to the sphere of time, the one that we live in. These gods or spirits participate in this dimension. They take interest in it. This episode is where I lose all of our listeners, I guess, but I don't give a fuck. Eternity is in love with the creatures of time means, to me, that in some way these creatures of the higher sphere, or the sphere itself in the abstract, take joy in what we time-bound beings can bring forth into the physical existence in our limited material sphere. It may be pushing the envelope, but if these beings take joy in the creations of time, might they not also nudge us a little bit to produce them? If that's true, then the image of the muse whispering inspiration into the artist's ear is quite apt. The timeless communicating to the time-bound. By Blake's model, as I understand it, it's as though the Fifth Symphony exists already in that higher sphere, before Beethoven sat down and played da-da-da-dum. The catch was this: the work only existed as potential, without a body, so to speak. The catch was this: the work only existed as potential, without a body, so to speak. It wasn't music yet. You couldn't play it. You couldn't hear it. It needed someone. It needed a corporal being, a human, an artist, or more precisely, a genius, in the Latin sense of soul or animating spirit, to bring it into being on this material plane. So, the muse whispered into Beethoven's ear, Maybe she hummed a few bars into a million other ears, but no one else heard her. Only Beethoven got it. He brought it forth. He made the Fifth Symphony a creation. He made the Fifth Symphony a creation of time, which eternity could be in love with. So that eternity, whether we conceive of it as God, pure consciousness, infinite intelligence, omniscient spirit, or if we choose to think of it as beings, God, spirits, avatars, when it or they hear somehow the sounds of earthly music, it brings them joy. In other words, Blake agrees with the Greeks. The gods do exist, but the gods do exist. They do penetrate our earthly sphere, which brings us back to the Muse. The Muse, remember, is the daughter of Zeus, father of the gods, and memory. Oh, I can't even say this next word. Mnesane? Whatever, it doesn't matter. That's a pretty impressive pedigree. I'll accept those credentials. I'll take Xenophon at his word before I sit down to work. I'll take a minute. Okay, this part doesn't actually matter because it relates to the next, this kind of poem thing or whatever. But yeah, I think it's interesting, this idea that whether it's important to believe it or not, I'm not sure. This idea that there are these sort of things out there that need to be created or like want to be created, whether it's music, art, companies, whatever, it doesn't fucking matter. And there's basically a opportunity to become someone who can listen and actually take action on these things. And I think that a lot less people are going to be able to tap into this ability to listen to where ideas come from as more and more people become addicted to social media, addicted to AI, addicted to content, and just spend all their time being stimulated and numbed. And there's an opportunity for people who can really sit down and just start working on things, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Whether that's your business, whether that's music, whether that's art. And I think it's possible to mix all these things together. I mean, what I've been doing for quite a while, I told you guys about this, but this is my notebook. What I'm doing for the audio podcast is I'm holding up a leather-bound notebook. It's called a Traveler's Notebook. I really like the brand because you can put lots of inlays and you can make it look how you want. But I have like my front section of it, which is my work stuff, and my back section of it, which is called Nothing Practical. And my Nothing Practical section is just me like painting, drawing for no other reason than I just want to get stuff out of my head and just kind of enjoy sitting down and sketching. And I do also this morning pages exercise in here where I just do stream of consciousness writing. And the cool thing is like these things can play into each other. They don't have to. Like this can just be a hobby. This can just be a place where you draw, paint, sit down and write and do whatever you want. Doesn't have to play back into your work, but I think everything is all connected anyway. And this idea of trying to not obsessively be practical about everything and trying to strengthen this connection to this like gut feeling or like listen to what it is that I really want to do. I'm kind of rambling here because I'm feeling like nauseous and stuff, but most of you who've been listening to this podcast for a while kind of know what I mean. So, yeah, I mean, for me, that brings me back to this idea of when building a business, one of the things that has been I think one of the places that most of the success of AJ and Smart has come from, if I contrast AJ and Smart with other similar small businesses, maybe in the agency or consulting space, I think one of the things that has separated us from them and made us stand out is that we never paid attention to other agencies. Like, it took me years I remember, like, we were like, AJ and Smart was like 5 years old. We were a company for 5 years when we first heard about IDEO, or, you know, like when we first were presented with that business, and we were like, oh, that's really cool. But luckily, we hadn't seen it yet. I was obsessed with filmmaking, video games. I wanted to be a video game designer. So a lot of my business building for AJ and Smart was inspired by video game companies that I wanted to work at and that I was fascinated by, like Kojima Productions and Valve and companies like this. And also a lot of like the way that we were doing things at AJ and Smart was inspired by my favorite bands, my favorite art, my favorite movies, my favorite games. I remember being so inspired by how Radiohead released In Rainbows. And I don't know if you saw, they just launched their European tour. And just the way they do things, just the way they launch things, I always found it very inspiring. And then we ended up going to this Funnel Hacking Live thing, this Russell Brunson conference. And this really inspired me. And again, there was no people in our space interested in that. There was no people in the design, facilitation, creativity space going to these conferences because they hated these things. But I think just the ability to look at, well, what's current, like maybe I'll just follow that thread and see where it goes and not care whether it's going to integrate into my business or not, I think can create a much more interesting business to the outside world than if you're just a straight up, cold, personality-less copy of another business. Like, I'm thinking a lot of the time when people book AJ and Smart, they're booking us because there's like a weirdness when they watch our YouTube videos, when they watch they can tell there's like a originality to what's happening. There's a strange mix of, there's like a really weird mix of influences that they can't quite pick out. When they come to our office, they're like, what the fuck is this? Like, there's so much James Bond stuff in our office. There's so much, there's a lot of, it's a strange mishmash of my hobbies and obsessions just drilled into this business. And I've never tried to hide them. I mean, this podcast is a perfect, I've said a million times, this podcast is inspired by a podcast by a guy called Jeff Gersman. I said that in episode 1. I watch and listen to this Jeff Gersman podcast and another video game podcast called Giant Bomb. And I literally say to my team, I'm like, I want to do that. Like, I want it to look like that. I want it to feel like that. I just want that. That's the vibe I want. And then, but I'm talking about my stuff, right? I think this ability to bring in just this ability to let yourself realize what things you're interested in by not distracting yourself the whole time, by just sitting down, just by I don't know, doing the work and just letting your influences influence the way your business is running. You know, differentiation, people talk about it like a process and like a cold strategic thing. Differentiation comes from the founder, especially in a founder-led business. It's the founder's vibe that differentiates a business. It's the founder's fucking vibe and opinions. And I think that's going to become ever more important as the AI stuff makes everything more and more bland. I'm still here. I'm just thinking. I've been wanting to like force myself to do longer episodes. I know the reason being here is that this podcast is not supposed to be about, you know, getting to the point. I say over and over again, please don't listen to this podcast on 2x. you're not going to get anything. Like, there's no bullet points that are going to be interesting from this episode. The idea here is you listen to this podcast while you're doing something else. And if one or two things stick out for you, great. If not, that's also fine. Just make it part of your Tuesday routine. That's all I ask. I really recommend reading book 3 of The War of Art. I'm about to start reading this Turning Pro book by Steven Pressfield as well. I just got it. Yeah, I think I won't make it too much longer on this episode. My brain is too fried. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Leave a comment on YouTube if you're watching it here. Just let me know that there's actually anyone watching it. I'm not super interested in feedback on what you want to hear on the episodes because this is just basically an art project anyway, so I'm not trying to make it useful. But what I would like to hear is where you're listening to it, where you're watching it. You can go to unschedule.fm to leave comments on the actual podcast. You can listen to this on Apple Podcasts. You can listen to this on Spotify, on YouTube, and at least for the next while, we're going to be putting these episodes out. I'm going to be putting these episodes out on YouTube as well. I'm looking forward to the Apple event later. That's probably, I'll talk about that next week. By the way, if you're going to watch the Apple event, or if you have watched the Apple event today, please, the thing to do with an Apple event is assume, first of all, it's going to be like every year people say, oh my God, it was such a letdown. Apple's losing the plot, blah, blah, blah. Don't be one of those people. Be one of the people who watches it and says, oh, that's an interesting way I could do this thing. Or that's interesting the way they, like, for example, they have to make the same old thing, the iPhone, which gets slight upgrades every year, seem exciting every year. And they always have to look for a gimmick to talk about. Let's watch what the gimmicks are going to be. Let's watch the things they do that make their same every year product stand out and seem interesting. Let's just see that. Let's just see that. The fuck am I going to call this episode title? Jonathan has diarrhea. That's going to be the episode of it. The name of it. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. I hope you have an amazing week. I hope some of you read part 3 of The War of Art and let me know what you think of that. Do you think it's too esoteric? Do you think it's too crazy? I think it's interesting. I don't do psychedelics and actually, I'm kind of like one of these people who's very scared of mind-altering drugs. But I guess I can somewhat get the effect that people talk about by reading kind of trippy shit like that. I find it very interesting. I'm very fascinated by it. I think if you want to go deeper on that topic, The War of Art, Book 3, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. It's the same thing. And there's a few, it's definitely something. Chris Martin from Coldplay talks about it all the time. He has he talks about this idea that the songs sometimes come fully formed. Also heard the guy from the Beatles, what's the main Beatles guy? McCartney, yeah. He got one of his, he just woke up one morning and this tune was in his head and it became the Yesterday theme tune, or the melody for Yesterday. And that he didn't have the words, but he had the melody. But he was like, I'm going to work with this. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I don't know. I hope I've actually recorded this episode and I can't do another one. I can't record this again. So if it's fucked, it's fucked. See you guys next Tuesday. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. That would actually be helpful. Getting more views means YouTube shares it more. So, hey, if you're listening to this inside the Substack app, maybe you could switch to listening to it on YouTube. Just have it on in the background. That'll help more people see the videos. Thanks. Have a lovely day. And I wonder if I can change. Okay. Well, I'm going to try something here on the video version. Bye, everybody.